The fantasy football trade deadline is officially this week. This is the last opportunity you will have to make your rosters better outside of the waiver wire. So, on today's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast, we have 4 players that we think you should sell ahead of the fantasy football trade deadline. Might be a sell high, might be a sell low, might be just get anything you can get before the bottom falls out. Different categories of players that we have here we think you'll enjoy. I'm your host, Shaun Moran. I'm joined by my good friend, my fellow knower of ball, and my co-host, Aidan Haller. Aidan, man, rough to be a Bears fan. Twitter's been very unkind to Caleb Williams and the Bears this week.
Yeah, it's never been more over.
It's really over.
It's tough being early November, knowing like this year is cooked. So it is what it is. I do think we're at the lowest point. I don't think it's going to look any worse than it did last week against New England. I'm fine if we start turning the ball over. Just like I want Caleb to let it rip. They've turned him into a game manager, which is like not all what he is. So the last 8 games, all I want to see is Caleb let it fly. And yeah, who knows? Technically, we're not dead in the playoff hunt, but like our strength of schedule is like a full 100 points like harder than any other team. So should be fun. But on the bright side, I've got some teams that are on the verge of fantasy playoffs.
Yeah,
and that's what we're here to talk about today. How you doing today, Shaun?
I'm good, dude. The 49ers have the 3rd best offense in DVOA, 5th best defense, 31st special teams. That's a real stat.
Yeah, that's not uncommon territory for you, unfortunately.
It does make sense. It does make sense. So yeah, I get to just hate watch them every week. It's a good time. 5-4, probably not going to make the playoffs. Probably might. Who knows? It'll be fun.
NFC,
I'm going to be mad.
I don't think 9 gets in this year. 10 might not even get you in the NFC. There's so many really bad teams, and the NFC has so many. Like, I think every team in the playoff picture right now in the NFC has at least 6 wins.
It's going to be through the division. We're going to play the Cardinals head up, so it'll probably be that game.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. We blew a 3-score lead against the Cardinals at home earlier in the year. So good time to be a Niner fan. So normally early in the week we drop waiver wire content. We decided to take a break. Go pick up Audric Estime and Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell. You'll thank me later. Maybe AD Mitchell goes on a tear, and my AD Mitchell better than Brian Thomas tweet isn't going to get sent to freezing cold takes. Maybe, just maybe here.
BTJ is headed the wrong direction on offense, and AD Mitchell is kind of trending up. So could end up kind of evening out by the end of the year.
Could be.
Probably not evening out, but at least they could get closer.
The BTJ victory laps were a little premature. He was getting comped to Randy Moss by some people on Twitter. Like, come on, let's settle down, kids. Let's
take it easy. Let's take it easy.
So no waiver wire content this week. We wanted to talk through the trade deadline. It's an important time of the year. A lot of deals get done this week. A lot of people tune in. They see the banner on their Yahoo or Sleeper app saying the trade deadline's this week. They feel some urgency to make a deal. This time last year, I traded for Trey McBride. He was a pretty big piece for me, trying to make a stretch run in a league. So like there's plenty of good deals that can be had. This is going to be part 1. We're going to do 2 episodes, one on players we're selling, one on players we're buying. We'll talk through potential deals. We'll do some screen shares. We'll talk to the players, the opportunity, the usage, etc. You know the drill here on the Regression to the Mean podcast. Aidan, though, I'm sure this is somebody's first time watching us. They clicked on the thumbnail. They're intrigued. They're thinking, who should they sell? One of my guys on my team being talked about. Aidan, if that is somebody's first time watching us, what do you think those people should do at home?
Yeah, welcome to the channel, first of all. For those of you that are returning, good to have you back. We're excited to have you. Yeah, Shaun mentioned a bit different from our normal scheduled programming. Typically, we're doing waivers Monday. Rankings come out Friday and Saturday for wide receivers and running backs. So, we like to do episodes like this every couple of weeks. So, glad you stumbled upon us. Just hang out, enjoy the show. We're ultimately trying to help you guys, win championships. So feel free to skip around if you want to. There's only 4 guys in here, but they'll be stamped if you just kind of want to see who we're talking about. Like, comment, subscribe. Just enjoy the show. Let us know what you think.
Awesome. Well, Aiden, we're going to start things off here with, I think, kind of one that will surprise some people. He had a monster week 9 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is a Hall of Famer. Like, I think we can etch that in stone here. And that's
Yes.
none
Yeah.
other than DeAndre Hopkins, newly acquired receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's played 3 weeks with the Chiefs, so a lot of the stats I'm going to throw out here, it is a bit of a small sample size, so you have to take that with a grain of salt. I'm not counting his Week 8 game against the Raiders. He barely played, so I don't think that's a fair game to count. He's played essentially 2 full games with the Chiefs here, Aiden. In those games, he's seen a 60% route participation, 16% target share, 20% first read target share. He's had 70 yards a game, 19 fantasy points per game on 13 expected fantasy points per game. Not bad. You'll take that for 2 games, right?
Yeah, 32-year-old wide receiver. You'll definitely take
Yeah.
that.
Took him in the 9th, 10th round, thinking he's going to be a Tennessee Titan. If this trade goes down in the offseason, he probably goes in like the 5th round because he's a Chief, right? The Chief, the bump. So you look at these numbers, and on the surface, you're like, okay, this is fine. This is serviceable. I can put him as my wide receiver 3. If I'm playing at a double flex league, I can put him as my wide receiver 4. I get all that, but man, this is still a Travis Kelce offense. Like, Travis Kelce is dominating in all of the metrics: target share, first read target share, expected fantasy points per game. Since Rashee Rice went down, he has been the alpha in this offense. And DeAndre Hopkins has been a nice downfield complementary piece. He had a slow game against Denver because guess what? People have slow games against Pat Surtain. It's really not that uncommon. But I will say that because he's not the number one target earner in this offense, and that most of his production in terms of fantasy points has came from touchdowns, 31% has come from touchdowns. Like, I just feel like a little bit of this 19 fantasy points per game is a bit fluky. And him, scoring 9 to 12 points is probably going to be more common versus, say, those 28-point spike weeks. And if you look at their calendar and who they're playing over the next 4 weeks, Aiden, they got Buffalo, Carolina, Las Vegas, the Chargers, Cleveland, Houston, and Pittsburgh. Where these teams rank against receivers. So the Bills give up the 25th fewest fantasy points per game. Panthers, 19th. Everyone just runs on the Panthers. Raiders, 28th. Everyone just runs on the Raiders. Chargers, 26th. Now he gets 2 juicy matchups against the Browns and Texans at the start of the fantasy playoffs. But then he plays the Steelers in the championship game, 23rd fewest. He's got 2 really good matchups here in the playoffs, but really tough sledding against a lot of these teams for the majority of the fantasy season. And considering that he's not the number one target earner, considering that his strength of schedule isn't great, considering that this offense doesn't really score touchdowns and is pretty run heavy and it's atypical of what a Patrick Mahomes offense is, like, I just feel like your league mate's perception right now of D-Hop on the Chiefs is like, this is the new Moss and Brady, bro. You didn't see the tweet? Come on, man. Look at him. Like, this is it. I get it. I just feel like you can sell high on him. And this is the establish the run trade calculator here. You could trade D-Hop straight up for Trey McBride based off of their rankings right now.
Yeah, I would absolutely do that personally.
Do that in a heartbeat. What are your thoughts? Like, am I overthinking this one? D-Hop, Mahomes, is the vibes too good? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is like a classic sell high. Ideally, you even did it a week ago after the monster spot. We saw a trade go down in our league. After that, and I was kind of like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" And then we kind of saw what like a normal, I think, week to week is like looked like last week. Travis Kelce is beginning to look more and more like Travis Kelce every week as the year has gone on. Is the clear wide receiver 1 in that offense. So on the service level, it's like, hey, this is, the wide receiver 1, continues to lead all wide receivers in, target share, blah, 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 yards, touchdowns, etc. But like you mentioned, there's still a very run heavy team. This is a Travis Kelce funnel. And then there's still just so many other guys that get touches and targets in this offense. Like, they had 10 targets to Kareem Hunt last week. Like, they use their running backs heavy. They use, multiple wide receivers. We're consistently seeing Noah Gray, Justin Watson, even Xavier Worthy, as kind of disappointing as he's been, like, still continues to get his 4 or 5 looks a game too. So it's really hard to expect like a monster kind of role from him. So yeah, like, there's even wide receiver twos in offenses that I'd be willing. Like Devonta Smith, I think is pretty close here. I'd rather have Smitty. Sure, he's the wide receiver two in that offense, but
Yeah,
like
I'd rather have Smitty.
that's a much clearer role in my opinion. So I don't know. You also risk the Chiefs kind of taking their foot off the gas as the year goes on. They're what now 9-0. What are we going into week 11? I don't think they've had their bye.
Dude.
Have they had their bye?
Yes, they've had their bye. They had it
They've had
earlier
their
in the
bye.
year. Dude,
Yeah, so
you could trade CeeDee Lamb for DeAndre Hopkins straight up based off this trade calculator right now. I know that's risky.
That wouldn't
but
happen.
It's risky.
Sure, I'd
but
rather have CD. But yeah, this is a good sell high. And who knows? Maybe we eat our words. DeAndre Hopkins
Could be.
is DeAndre Hopkins.
It's an awesome
He's had a
player.
hell of a career, some of the best hands in the game for the last decade. So we'll see. But I can support this one. This isn't a guy that I'd be dying to keep on my roster. This is, I'd probably be looking to flip him.
We just have a Chiefs vendetta. I'm just still upset about Rashee Rice, but we're going to move on to our second player we're selling here, and somebody who's had an unreal role to start the year, and that is none other than Kareem Hunt. I had a guy in the comments. I ranked Kareem Hunt higher than Jahmyr Gibbs last week, and the guy was like, bro, it's ridiculous having Kareem Hunt in front of those guys. I'm like, dude, look at the data, my friend. Kareem Hunt has an absurd role in fantasy football, but you're going to get off of somebody who has scored over 18 fantasy points. I mean, in 4 out of his last 5 games. The guy's just been a machine since becoming the starting back for the Chiefs. Why are you trading Kareem Hunt?
Yeah, so I'm trading Kareem Hunt mainly just because of what's on the horizon with Isaiah Pacheco. This one, kind of like you mentioned, there's a couple of different categories that these are going to fall into in terms of our sells. And in my opinion, by the time Isaiah Pacheco gets back, it's going to be right around fantasy playoffs. So it is rumored that he's going to be activated this week, meaning his 21-day window opens for the Chiefs to activate him. And they're absolutely going to activate him. This is a guy that they're going to want for another playoff run. So by no means do I think they're going to rush Isaiah Pacheco back, but this is a guy that is going to be coming back shortly. So we're going into week 11. We've got 4 total weeks until the fantasy playoffs begin. That kind of sets up for brutal timing for Kareem Hunt going into the fantasy playoffs. One of the reasons he's been so great, like Shaun mentioned, he's averaged just over 17 fantasy points per game over the last 5 weeks since he really took over that role. Incredible. Just playing an absurd amount of snaps, involved in the rushing game, and involved in the passing game. Really exciting. But I do think by the time we get to fantasy playoffs in week 15, we're looking at a part-time player, which is kind of a bit of a disaster. So I think it really depends on what type of team you have right now, because I do think holding on to Kareem Hunt right now is going to help you get into the playoffs. But if you have, a surplus of running backs, this is a team that, maybe you're sitting at, call it, we're a week 10, 8-2, maybe even 7-3, getting off of him for a more dependable back, like someone I would recommend would be like a guy like Brian Robinson, or maybe you need some wide receiver help. Someone's desperate in your league for a running back. I think that could work too. So I don't know. What do you think? I was kind of slow to get back on the Kareem Hunt train, but I do think by the time fantasy playoffs come around, this is not a player that is going to be as valuable as he is right now. And, for that reason, I'd rather get off before you kind of lose all value.
Yeah, so my thing with Kareem Hunt is he's had an incredible run to start this year. I mean, his usage has been crazy. Like he has basically since he's taken over, his utilization score over here on Fantasy Life has been
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's been like top 12. He was the number 1 expected fantasy points per game over the past month, and he's not really that far behind in terms of efficiency. And if you watch their offense, their identity is like, let's just line it up to Kareem Hunt and let him go. Like it works. Like my thing with him is I do think Pacheco broke his leg, and we've now seen multiple instances of guys breaking their leg, coming back, and not looking like themselves. Tony Pollard is what I think of. I think of
Tank Dell.
Cooper Kupp had the tightrope, which isn't necessarily a broken leg, but it's a similar procedure. He looked slow for a while. Mark Andrews looks super slow. Mark Andrews looks awesome now. So I'm not that worried about Isaiah Pacheco later on in the year or even next year. He'll probably be completely fine. But I do think it could be slow out of the gates for him, and I do think Kareem Hunt maintains a role. So, like, if I'm looking at the trade calculator here on establish the run, they're saying you can trade Kareem Hunt for Rashad White straight up, and
Yeah, I think I'd do
I
that.
think they probably have pretty similar roles towards the end of the year. I do think Kareem Hunt's not going to be sent to the shadow realm. I do think he's going to remain a part of
No,
that
I don't
offense.
think
I'd be shocked if
yeah.
Pacheco just like had the Pacheco role again out of the gates.
I see it being close to like 50-50 once they're back, but I guess like how do you see the touches being divvied out between him and Pacheco? Because I think that's the biggest thing is like if he's still like, like the 60-40 back, you're probably still fine. But if you're at 50-50 or even worse than that, you're probably just banking on touchdowns or kind of some PPR floor.
I think that goal line's a coin flip. Pass catching, I think Kareem Hunt's probably going to be the third down back.
Yeah, this one's tough to read. Especially because like the vibes are so high with Kareem Hunt right now in terms of like how he's doing in your lineup. So, this one's risky. I'm more so trying to avoid the fantasy playoff face plant. There's nothing worse than getting to the playoffs and then like your guys you rode there just fall on their faces in that first week and you get bounced. Like, and that is a situation I see that could potentially unfold with Kareem Hunt, just given the exact timing that we're looking at with say Pacheco's return.
I'm curious. Two waiver wire darlings, Cedric Tillman, Kareem Hunt. They have Cedric Tillman way ahead here.
Yeah, I think
Interesting.
I'd probably take Tillman, but again, like so much of this depends on like what does your roster construct look like. Like it's hard for me to tell you to trade away Kareem Hunt. Like what if he's your only running back that's really giving you anything right now? Like you probably got to ride it at this point. If you know,
Would you go trade Kareem Hunt for Keon Coleman for the stretch run? Keon Coleman comes back after next week. His wrist's fine. Would you go trade for him?
Probably not. I don't think so.
I might go try and trade for Kareem Hunt because I'm desperate for running backs.
Yeah. See, like it totally comes down to like what you need here.
But I do think that if you got him and you've you've won a bunch of games because of him, I do think you could just flip him. Like this is a great time to do it. Just sell him. Like why not? Like he is going to lose his effectiveness for sure. He's not going to be the RB1 in usage with Pacheco back. So we already know there's going to be downside. How steep is the downside risk is the question.
We will see. All right,
man. This one, I apologize in advance here, because we're gonna have to talk Bears. We're gonna have to talk the Bears offense, and I'm look, Swift's been awesome in fantasy. He had a rough first month, middle part of the season, he went off, but this Bears offense, it's fallen off a cliff here. I mean, they just fired their OC. Their wide receivers are running off the field mid play. Their prize quarterback looks broken, and their offensive line is falling apart. Everything about their offense makes zero sense, and it is not a good environment at all for a running back to be in. Because in my experience, bad teams with bad QB play usually don't create a formula for fantasy running backs that do well during the stretch run. And when you partner that with his production versus before the bye and after the bye, along with his upcoming schedule, it's just a nightmare. It's like weeks 1 through 7, awesome. DeAndre Swift was great. RB 17 in fantasy points per game at 15 per pop. RB 13 in expected fantasy points per game at 16 per pop. Last 2 weeks since the Bears offense fell apart, RB 31 with 11 fantasy points per game. RB 23 in usage with 12.9. His rest of season schedule, with his performance trending downwards, his rest of season schedule is against Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit, San Francisco, Minnesota, and Detroit. Green Bay, 20th fewest fantasy points to running backs. Minnesota, 29th fewest fantasy points to running backs. Detroit, 27th. San Francisco, 13th. Minnesota, 29th. Detroit, 27th. It's a nightmare schedule for any running back. I don't think the Bears are going to be favored in any of those games, and their offensive line will be severely outmatched. That is a brutal stretch run for any team, let alone a team that just fired their OC. DeAndre Swift's usage is trending down. His production's trending down. His efficiency is trending down, and it's a nightmare schedule. So
this is a bad vibe. So I think the hardest part here is I don't think you're going to get much for him. I think, like, pretty consensus, like you mentioned, everyone sees how bad the vibes are with this Chicago Bears offense. I don't see a ton of people chomping at the bit to get him. I think what is encouraging, at least to some degree, is New England, didn't produce much. But even against Washington and Arizona, 2 games that the offense was, downright atrocious, he still kind of performed. He still got you right around 15 fantasy points per game. So I think the lack of other running backs or threats in the backfield gives me hope to a degree. Like, this is probably a hold for me. I don't think I'm definitely not trying to trade for him. But I don't think people are really going to want to buy him from you is my thing. Yeah, I would definitely rather have Tracy.
What about Bucky Irving?
I don't think I'd rather have Bucky.
I'd much rather have Bucky than Swift. I'd much rather have an offense that's competent with a receiving core that's banged up, where they're just funneling everything underneath to running backs and tight ends.
Yeah, we do have the what's in the box mystery with the new play caller too, which just adds to like the uncertainty with this. Like, things could improve. It can't really get worse.
That schedule, dude, is so like he basically has to catch 5 passes per game for him to hit home.
I don't think
I'm not saying that can't happen, but
he's scoring touchdowns though too. Like, he's getting touches in the red zone. So I don't know. This is a weird one. Like, I totally get the sell. Like, everything is pointing towards like get rid of this sinking ship. My biggest concern is how do your league mates value him, and what do you think you can get in return?
Man, I would get Bucky. I get it. Swift's like a workhorse. There's no one challenging him, but I'd rather take a running back on a good offense. Fair. Like, that's how I'd approach it.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, man.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
This is tough. This is like the Wesley Snipes shooting your dog one in the back. Like
This one's sad.
Anthony.
It pains me. It pains me to get rid of the posse here. Anthony Pollard. Like, the vibes. Like, this is another bad vibes one, man. Like, things were going so well with Tajay out. Tony was touching the ball 20, 25, 30 times a game in this offense. But just looking at last week alone, those days are over. Pollard had 9 carries for 44 yards on the ground, caught 4 more passes for 16 yards, 54% of the snaps, which was his lowest on the season. Let me see. Yeah, that was his lowest snap share on the season. Tajay, in his first week back, 7 carries for 47 yards, so was more efficient on the ground, caught 3 of his passes for 4 yards, so not much there. The other 46%. So good thing is there's only 2 guys. I forget what your guy's name is. The other running back there
Julius Chestnut.
Chestnut. So Chestnut's not doing anything, which is good.
No, Chestnut's gone. Chestnut got the shadow realm. It's a 2-man backfield.
So the days of the 70, 80% touches or like snaps, those are dead. The Titans continue to be a pretty bad football team too. They're scoring less than 2 touchdowns per game. It's just not an efficient offense. And they've made it clear. I think it came out, I think it was last week. The quote was like, we're going to limit his touches. Tajay.
Creative touch management was their words.
Creative touch management, AKA, like, we don't want to kill Tony Pollard here. And then you just look at his schedule too, especially these next couple of weeks leading into the fantasy playoffs are pretty brutal. You've got the Vikings, who I think are a top 3 unit. I guess
you don't run on the Vikings. You don't run on the Texans.
Washington has gotten a whole lot more stout up front too.
Since he's good against running backs, and then he's good against running backs.
Jacksonville's gettable if you somehow survive to the fantasy championship with Tony. But yeah, you're going to want to get out of this one. Unless Tajay gets hurt, or this,
which he could. He's been hurt the whole year,
or they magically transform and they start, scoring more points and scoring more touchdowns. This is a tough player to own. Like, him getting to 10 points last week was a miracle.
What's so funny is he went from having the best usage ever for a month, and they were like, "Yo, we're gonna kill him." Yeah, we're gonna kill him,
and it's gone.
It was crazy when they DMP'd him for 3 weeks, and then he came out and that was week 9 again, where he had 80% of the rush attempts, 85% of the snaps without practicing for a whole week. And then all the coach speak was like, we need Tajay back. Like, we did not envision workhorse Pollard. And I do think this team has aspirations of being good next season. Like, they have talent. Their defense is good. They have Calvin Ridley. Like, I get why they're kind of like, yo, we don't want to put all these miles on Tony. Next year, we might have a rookie quarterback, right? They might draft a guy if the Levis experiment doesn't go well. So, like, I get it.
Sure.
And Tajay's a good player. You know, I'm a huge Tajay Spears fan.
He's good.
Huge Tajay Spears fan.
Yeah,
so,
he's got juice.
Yeah, man, this makes sense. I feel like you could easily trade Tony Pollard. Because, like,
so too.
I would trade for him, like, in leagues where I'm running back needy. Like, I wouldn't get super aggressive in a package that I would give up. Like, what do you think people could give up for Tony Pollard?
Oh, gosh. What did I have up here? Let me
They got
see
him at
again.
375, which is like
You're probably looking at like a fuck, dude. Could you get who I think you could get? Let's see.
No, you couldn't get Tyrone Tracy with that.
You could buy low on DJ Moore.
I'm not doing that.
No, you could go get a guy like Cortland Sutton. You could go like get a nice like wide receiver too.
You could trade. You could get Cortland Sutton for Tony Pollard.
Juwan.
You can get Juwan Jennings too.
I think those are both like two like really good examples there. Like, I don't think you're somehow flipping Tony Pollard for another running back. I think your league mates probably aren't that dumb. But yeah, go and get like a firm wide receiver too. Like Sutton's just above him there at 402. I think like they're, pretty equals, but I think you could flip Tony for both of those guys and be pretty stoked about it.
All right, that's 4. We got 3 running backs, and everyone's trying to trade for running backs. So we're giving you 3 guys that you could sell.
Go get them.
D-Hop, Kareem Hunt, DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard. Like mentioned at the top, this is just part 1. The next episode will be in your feed, hopefully either Wednesday or Thursday, and it will be the buys. So stay tuned for that. Let us know if you have any trade questions. Put it in the comments below. Aidan is always going through it, giving advice. We appreciate Aidan for everything that he does for the Mean Team. Aidan, thank you for joining as always. Thank you, everybody. Until next time.